Hello, fellow co-creators. My name is Creatrix Libby, and in this video, we are going to be talking about the power of limitation. Now, limitation does not feel good when we're in it. I want you to imagine when your keys get in a knot and you can't unknot them, when your hair you've been playing with and you get it in a knot and you can't get it out. You might also think about a moment in relationship where it just feels like, we are not seeing things the same way. And you might definitely think about, since I mostly work with creatives and business owners and entrepreneurs, you definitely might be thinking about a creative project in your home, in your life, in your workplace where the solution is not readily available. Now, as someone who used to work on systems change more and more of the social side and has moved more into the mindset and inner work side right now, I can say that these knots can get very, very complex. And the line that I want to bring you is something that I bring to my relationship and embodied coaching clients, which is the knot of knots is freed by the heart. So, what is the knot of knots? The knot is the K-N-O-T, the knot, like the knot in the hair, the knot in the relationship, the knot in the situation of knots, N-O-Ts. NOTs are all of the things our attention are on that we don't want. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to keep recreating this thing. I don't want to feel angry. I don't. Not this, not this, not this, not this. So let's just energetically notice what it feels like when we're in the knot of knots. None of us are free of this. Even those of us who are working on the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, energetic, belief work, embodiment side of things, we all come to our own knot of knots. It is part of the human experience. So, how do we free ourselves? Because there is going to be solutions, there is going to be actions, there is going to be new awareness. But first, we actually need to come at it from another vantage point. And how do we get to that vantage point? Because when we are in the knot of knots, be it the physical knot, or in the mind, or with another being, or with our culture, or with our society, the first action is reaction. The first desire is to free and it's to pull harder. But we know with knots that the more that we pull, the tighter it gets. So how do we free ourselves from the knot of knots? Without ignoring the problem, without not having to pretend that it's not there, but by beginning to shift our attention. Where should the attention go? Because you also might be thinking there's pressure involved with that knot. Maybe if it's your keys, there's not, but if you've ever like locked your keys in the car or um, there's a child who's screaming who needs something, or you just injured your body, like these knots are not just up here, they are in front of us as well. So there is pressure. And there's another word that I like to use, which is these knots often involve the overlap of trauma, resistance, attachment, pressure, pain, and energy drain, which spells the word trapped. And when you have this mix of trauma, resistance, attachment, pain, pressure, energy drain, it can feel like there is only limits. I only see limits. There is no way out. So let's just take a breath with that feeling first. The feeling of there is no way out. I can't figure this out. As a person with an extremely active mind, I know what it feels like to keep pulling and keep tugging and keep putting more on the situation in an attempt to free oneself from it. And while there is a whole bunch of things that can be looked at within energy, mind, body, emotion. What I want to do today is just make a simple shift for that moment. When you are in the knots, the KNOT of NOTs, the knot of knots, and all you can see is what you don't want, and all you can feel is what you don't want, know that continuing to think in that moment is like tightening. So we need to actually come to another place, long built up, just to say we are coming into the heart. What is the place that can begin to loosen? Two things here with the heart. This is an actual literal place in the body. And when we shift our breathing, we shift connection to the blood flow and to oxygen directly into the blood, the lungs. So this is a literal response first, the literal heart. Beginning to shift our breathing patterns. Let's just try that right now. Two more deep breaths, a little bit longer. One more. And then we're going to look at the metaphorical heart. The metaphorical heart we connect with through meditation, through disconnection from our sensory experience, which is heightening the dis-ease, the pain, the pressure. The metaphorical heart is like this image behind me. It is a recognition of, a connection to a larger field, a larger picture of which we are a part. You can picture it like the cell structure of the body in a universal level. You can picture the number of stars in the sky, but it is that pause, that even this moment that feels so big and so real and is potentially full of so much pain and pressure is part of a bigger picture in space and in time that I cannot see the whole thing of. And that is still thoughts. So what we want to do is not force ourselves to think that I need to get out of this. I need to understand the big picture, but actually come into the heart space. You can also imagine lengthening the spine and come into connection with that sense of what is bigger than me. Now, this is not always possible or available when you are in the KNOT of NOTs. And as a somatic coach, an emotional coach, an intimacy coach, emotions are not the problem, is something I like to say. Emotions are not the problem. Emotions are full of information, they're full of wisdom. They're not the problem, but because they're not the problem, they're also not the solution either. So we tend to think emotions are the problem, so I need to change the emotion so then I will have the solution. But the emotions are just what you feel because of the knot. They aren't the knot themselves. So we need to actually be able to come into what the actual solution is, which is going to be discovered because likely you're going to have to try many different things. But it's going to begin with this state of connection to the heart. So, with all of this, my desire with starting magnetic design as a platform on Substack as another extension of my work at Elegance Lab and Liberatory Love is to begin to hold a bridge space for the work of design and creativity and emotional work. The more that we come into the heart, which we can also do by coming back in touch with our own values, with what is in integrity for us, with what is truthful for us, the more solutions, ideas, possibilities can come into our field and our space, the more receptivity we have for other things to come into our space. And I'd like to bring in one other theme here that I've been speaking about for years and have always had it a little bit on the side, but I'm going to bring it front and center and connect it into this issue. The other theme is digital wellness. I've been talking about digital wellness for years because I originally studied user experience design, which is the design of websites and apps. Then I studied global issues, then I traveled, then my brother committed suicide. And here we are, 6 years later, processing the interrelationship of all of these things. My belief is our technology is not the solution because our technology is not the problem. However, our technology is something that we can actually use in service of our creative expansion, of our heart opening, of our relational journey, of our growth into the next step. But if you can imagine from what I just described, when we are in the knot of knots, the KNOT of NOTs, when we are in the state of tension and dis-ease, we are looking for relief. That is not a problem, that is just a reality. We are looking for relief because of the quality of the tension and the quality of the pain. And technology tends to be the first most accessible drug that we have available to us. Sometimes it can soothe, but many times it is just a way to relieve stress or release. It can also bring joy, it can bring connection. But if we haven't come back to the heart, it can also just keep circulating the same state that we are in. If, however, we are aware that there's a larger issue happening, if we can bring our mind, our attention to the knots that need our attention, the knot of knots, which is asking us, what do we want? Not just what we don't want, but what do we want? Then we can all of a sudden shift. And the way that we enter the online space now we can use in service for the heart. Because the heart knows what we do want. The heart knows that sense of ease, that sense of safety, that sense of peace, that sense of serenity, that sense of elegance, that sense of order, that sense of flow, that sense of aliveness. When we are connected into that state, the things that we are open to shifts. As Erin Lyons says, who is another healer and channeler, we are tasked when we are expanding as humans and growing as humans, maturing as humans, with moving from a state of repelling to receiving. And so just for a moment, notice that when you are in the knot of knots, and then you're looking for relief, and then there's a device right there, you are looking for the relief, but you're still in the state of knots. Of all the things that you don't want, you just want the immediate relief. And so, while there's things that might make you laugh or calm you down or connect you, you might not actually be looking for the bigger solution to come in. You just want to feel better. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. But let me give a flip perspective. An alternative perspective of what else could happen if you weren't just looking for relief is a greater state of freedom. It's actual job prospects, it's actual relationships, it's actual cities opened up to you, it's opportunities opened up to you. So you can come into how does this affect a design directly around you that you're creating? How does this affect since a lot of people around me are creators, how does this affect the way you're designing your social media? How does this affect the way you're designing your home, the way that you're cooking, the way that you're in relationship with your partner, your family? How does this affect your mental health? How does this affect different areas? Well, you can actually come before you go online, you can actually come into the state of connecting to the heart. Ask yourself what it is you deeply want, what it is you deeply desire, which always on the first side is going to be freedom from all of those knots, but there's something else. There's something else there. You don't just want freedom from, you want freedom to. What do you want freedom to do? What do you want freedom to create? What do you want freedom to express? What do you want freedom to experience? What do you want freedom to be? One is, I don't want this job. Another is, I want time freedom. One is, I don't want this relationship. Another is, I desire interdependence. One is, I don't want abuse. Another is, I do want genuine love and connection. One is, I don't want stuckness and fear. Another is, I do want to feel safe. I do want to move. I do want to see what's possible. And at a baseline in my work, there is always, always the invitation into magic. I don't want limits. And this poses a challenge for me because I actually live inside of a being that has to eat, sleep, drink, use the bathroom, needs human connection, requires affirmation. None of these limits, though, mean that I am limited if I can relate to these limits in a new way. This is why limitation is a power. I know we went on a long journey here, but stick with me. Every experience of limitation brings us into a state of pushing back. And this experience is a gift. Many of us repel this rebellion side of ourselves. But this rebellion side of ourselves is a gift, is a disruptor. This is what it is to begin to receive the feminine in your life. And it can feel like, wait, but you just said, connect to the heart, connect to ease, connect to safety, connect to serenity in order to free myself from this limitation. And what you're also saying is to connect to the disruptor within, the anger, the agitation, the dis-ease, the need to change, the need to move. And my response is exactly. And as long as it took me to get here in this video is how long it's taken me in my life to learn how to make peace. I am learning how to make peace with these two spaces. This is this sacred relationship in yourself. That which grounds, heals, connects, that which stirs, agitates, irritates, which is here to open. The agitation around the knot is not a problem, it's a gift. But the agitation that leads into resistance, pulling, fighting, and reactivity becomes a further entrapment, becomes like the Chinese finger trap. The more you pull your fingers, the more entrapped you are. On the flip side, the more that agitation, that irritation, that anger connects you into the heart, the more your space of devotion can grow, and the more creative revolution instead of reaction can unfold. And from that creative revolution of doing things in a new way comes rebirth. So, all of these reflections are why I am expanding the number of platforms that I have to write on, from just creative revolution to wildly sovereign, which is this duality of feminine and masculine, and magnetic design, which is bringing this into creative process. But today, what I would love for you to leave with is the reminder that the limits that are present are not the limits that will always be here. The limits that are present are actually activators of more of your power personally and more of our power collectively. We can tap into awareness. And the limits, the things that you receive as limits, are here to be alchemized, not just removed, but alchemized. Alchemized is the word for when ice becomes water, becomes vapor. We don't just want to get rid of, we want to transform. And to do that, we have to remember that we are capable of that we are capable of transforming one element into another, one emotion into another, and that no state alone is the problem. No emotional state alone is the problem. No element in nature is the problem. And no dynamic alone is the problem relationally. Because dynamics can change. The consequences of these different beliefs are vast, and I invite you to play with them. My role as a creatrix always is to play. I alone am not here to free all the knots that exist within, without. The knots out there are within me, the knots in here are out there. However, I am here to shake, to disturb, to awaken, and also to disturb in a powerful way, in an agitating way, in a disrupting way, and to re-guide us back into the heart, because these are not opposites. Our wildness is in service of our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is in service of our wildness. And where we have polarized the two, where we make wrong the wildness, and where we make wrong the sovereignty, you can think of these as divine love and divine justice, divine structure, divine surprise. We just have not learned yet how to bring them together. There are distorted versions of both, of course. There is disruptive versions of both, of course. There is more aggressive and more harmful versions of both, of course. And what does it look like to hold deep reverence for both? Your solution, your next step is going to be a result of a reverence for both. And life will keep on agitating you until you are humbled before the feminine. You are humbled before the power of the wild. You are humbled before the chaotic. You are humbled before the womb space, the dark, the unknown. And you are humbled before sovereignty. You are humbled before divine masculine. You are humbled before the order that is incomprehensible. Both are here. And this stage, this space of growth and change and expansion in us as humans is about the revitalization of the revival of the lost feminine. But in that process, the masculine is being renewed. And this process is not about what gender we are on the outside. It is about our own heart, our own work with these dimensions ourselves, our own play with these dimensions within and without. So that is the final place that I will land here. The power of limitation in our thinking. Right now, there's so many challenging spaces, but at least for me, the space of religion, the space of science, the space of spirituality, the space of sexuality, the space of leadership, the space of business, the space of family, the space of dating, the space of relationship, the space of design, space of creation. I have explored so many different dynamics and dimensions that I have wound myself in so many knots over the years. And what I have been guided to, especially in this last year, where I have chosen sobriety so that I could really attune to this, to a quality of pain in my heart, in my body, and an inquiry of my system, a desire of my system, is these limitations are not here to stay. It does not mean they're not real. It does not mean that they're not present. I'll say that. These limits of bodies, limits of mind, these limits of consciousness, limits of perception, limits of awareness, limits of action, limits in systems, limits in experiences within. But none of these limits are final. Trauma and magic are not opposites. Trauma, resistance, attachment, pressure, pain, and energy during this trapped feeling is directing us into a deepened state and expanding us into a more creative state and authority than we have ever known. And this is happening in every space, in every dimension. So it's also important not to be shocked, not to be surprised when it feels like you've worked so much in one space and it doesn't feel like it translates over here, which is something I hear a lot from the people I work with as well. But I spent years on this, but it doesn't click, it doesn't work. Yeah, we're holistic beings. And even though how you do one thing is how you do everything, we have so much fragmentation in the way that society is set up now, in the way that we view things, perceive things, and it's okay. It's okay that one area feels okay and one area feels like total chaos. It's okay that the picture does not make sense. It's okay. Can we come back to the heart and stay true to our own integrity, our own truth, our own values, and receive the guidance one step at a time from that space? Because from the inner guidance, all you ever need is that receiving mode. That receiving mode now shifts the way that you can show up into our digital systems, which has access to a world body, access to all kinds of science, access to all kinds of research, access to all kinds of data. Can you feel now how when you've worked with the heart, the way you're going to connect to this collective consciousness, this field of information is going to look different? The questions you ask are going to shift. No longer is it just going to be show me this one thing to relieve this present moment of pain, but introduce me to the places, the things, the information that I need to not just face this limit, but alchemize this limit, transform this limit, lead myself through this limit, lead others through this limit in the process. And similarly, in our unconsciousness, it is very easy. I literally did this with my body because it's very easy to get into this online realm, overwhelmed already, and sink and sink and sink, or be empowered, come in this quality of disempowerment and pump ourselves up in an environment that's, this is the like petting and nurturing the victim in us, which it's fine to need some support, some solidarity. But there's a difference between being in an environment that is just patting you on the back and letting you cry and letting you fester in the pain versus an environment that is actively building you up into the reminder that you are a co-creator of your world, of our world, of greater intelligence on the planet, of greater love on the planet, greater stewardship of this planet. That all of this agitation is not here to be put back in a box. It is here to be met as part of greater birthing pain that our collective is experiencing, asking us to allow something new. And on a more literal space, even your simplest creative agitations, relational agitations, they also are part of a larger story. And maybe you're not ready for a full creative revolution in your life, but I'm living out a pattern that looks like my parents, and I don't want to. Or I'm living out a story that, in my religious and spiritual views, that no longer feels true. And I just want to explore what are other people's perspectives of God, of divinity, of energy, of source. Or I'm involved in a scientific process that feels limited, or I want to understand science more, or I want to understand history, but from the lens of where we're moving and where we're going forward. I want to see a future for the people who will come after me. I want to heal from my addictions. I want to understand what happens when we are coming from this receptivity is different solutions, different ideas get to come in, and new limitations also come. But we become engaged in this spiraling process that's behind me. It's no longer just, okay, I need to get out of this limitation to get in another one. It's actually tapping into an evolutionary process where I am remembering that I am holistic. I have multiple needs. I have multiple desires. I have multiple beliefs. I have multiple things that I want to achieve, work on, multiple people that I want to connect to, multiple everything. And I'm not saying everyone has this quality of multitudes, but I am working with the word this year, BWA, bitches with appetite, beings with appetite. Or if you don't like either of those words, you can just claim women with appetite. But what does it mean to have an appetite? What does it mean to have the desire for more at every level, intellectually, spiritually, energetically, emotionally, physically, financially, socially, spiritually, and on and on? So many of us feel that the more we're not allowed to say. And so we're back in the knot of knots. We're back in the KNOT of NOTs. We're back into, well, you should be satisfied because you built the business. You should be satisfied because you have this romantic relationship. You should be satisfied because of this body. You should be satisfied. Don't be satisfied. Be satisfiable, but be insatiable at the same time. Wildly sovereign. Sovereign as incomplete, whole, already enough. Wild as in full of life, as living as this creative consciousness that we are part of, evolving, growing, shifting. We have never settled. And just because our current creation has involved the creation of many destructive things and many things that are not in service to the whole, Doesn't mean we want to stop the creative process. It doesn't mean we want to stop growth. It means that we want to embrace the next level, the next understanding of what true growth is, which is inner and outer. We want to match, not stagnate, but match the inner process with the outer. One way of thinking, last limitation I'll bring, one way of thinking in the world today is that our growth itself is destroying the earth. Our appetite itself is destroying ethics. But what I would offer is that this is also a limitation because what it is saying is that our imagination and our desire is the problem, and our imagination and our desire is not the problem, in my vantage point. It's the unawareness that is the problem. The unawareness of our connection, the unawareness of the potential for the inner developments, the unawareness of the dimensions that we contain, the unawareness of the guidance that exists for us, the unawareness of seeing the future generations at the same time that we exist here, the unawareness of learning from the past, the unawareness of the ideas that want to come forth. We are not going to build something new or even dismantle what is here with the same tools that have been used, Audre Lorde. So, how do we begin to open? How do we begin to receive? Acknowledge the knot of knots. Acknowledge it, but reconnect here and listen to the agitation. What wants to be created? What wants to be formed? The last thing that I will share is that our trust is the foundation of all of this. And from my vantage point, because I believe we all have different things to contribute. But what I bring to the table as a designer is our belief when we are in the state of limitation is that we don't have what we need. We cannot transcend this. Trust is broken. Our trust, though, is already here in the same way my body is actually already connected and fused together, and there's literally nothing I can do to take it apart right now. Surgically is the only way, which would be a man-made addition. But other than that, on its own, without my work, it is operating, it is functioning. Obviously, not every body born on this planet has that. But there is innate connectivity within the being. This is also true for our trust. We are a being that is already connected. We are a being that is already in relationship to itself. So we're not building trust out of scratch. We are coming back into what we already are. And this is very important for those of us, in my opinion, who are working on causes that are bigger than our businesses, that are bigger than what is paying the bills, which is, anyone who's a creator of another way of being and doing. There are jobs we are working at, there are things that we are getting paid for, but we are also misfits under the surface, in the woodwork, connected to the house we live in, connected to the home that is this planet, connected to the heart that is belonging to all of us, connected to the consciousness that is for all of us. For those of us who work at this level, we know there is no amount of payment that could compensate for the work needed. And we are not going to get it done in our lifetimes, and it's not going to be any one of us. And I invite you to remember that there are those of us who are attuned to that heart. Even when it feels lonely and scary and challenging, there are those of us working on behalf of the collective heart who are staying in trust, even when we don't know every answer, even when we don't know every step, even when we alone as individuals cannot complete the task. We are fused, we are committed. What does it look like to begin to say yes to this kind of trust, to look for it, to seek it out, to trust that this trust is being built through 2025 and well beyond? And I just bring this reminder, this invitation to my community, to the people who I coach, to the creatives that I work with, to the entrepreneurs, to the business owners, to the mothers, to the fathers, the parents, the family members. Every single one of us is part of this kind of design. There is no one of us in a better position. There is only those of us who've chosen to say yes to the gifts of the heart, to stay in trust. This process is bigger than getting everyone around you on the same page, than your mind trying to get out of the knot of knots by finding relief through all its ways that it looks for relief. This is deeper. And if you are feeling this, it's a call to continue to come deeper into that knowing. So, to close out this video, if you are just looking to expand creatively, go on my platforms, Magnetic Design, Creative Revolution. If you, however, are looking to receive support, to move from repelling to receiving, to heal some of this pain around the masculine and the feminine and coming into this wild sovereignty within yourself, to creating a type of routine or schedule, if you are a business owner or creative, that will allow your process to emerge, not be bossed around by what's here, but be welcomed through what's here. That's what I call dream doula work, where we're going to be listening to the heart and learning to take action alignment with the heart. I'm also going to be running a group program each season for the upcoming year. So in autumn, this program will be it's all part of Wildly Sovereign, and Magnetic Design, but one will have the focus of love, sovereignty, currency, creation, and currency. That's the next 4 seasons. So whenever you're watching this video, this was recorded in October. Whenever you're watching this video, you can reach out, eleganceinnovationlab@gmail.com. You can ask me which season we're moving through right now. No matter what, all 4 of those topics, love, currency, creation, and sovereignty, is going to be touched on in that season. We'll just have a larger collective theme. And you can be part of a group environment where over the course of 12 weeks, we are moving together in sync, in rhythm, in our own processes, in a larger collective process of emergent creation, of magnetic design, of connecting into the heart and being a part of a continuous process that is both an acknowledgement of larger change and a welcoming of our personal gifts. My name is Libby. It will be a joy and an honor to serve you in this season, quarter, this stage of transition in your life. If you know that there is greater magic present, and the trauma that is present is not the end of the story, it is a limitation that is activating you into your next level of power.